what I always tell my students is that the secret to language learning is consistency. Like you have to keep going. Like you can't just expect that, okay, you do 3 hours today and then you wait for a couple of weeks and then you do, like you need to keep doing it and, you know, make it as a routine in your life. And that's how you learn. Like if you listen to Finnish 30 minutes a day, every single day, in this way, not just like radio on and not really paying attention with this method, you will start to understand, like it's a fact.
Hi, Lotta.
Hi, Alvaro.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so first of all, as usual, just tell us a little bit about your experience when it comes to languages, your first contact with foreign languages. Yeah, anything that you think it's relevant.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, like all of us, my first contact with languages was through school. So traditional language classes, and let's say the first time that I realized that that's maybe not the most efficient way of learning was when I after high school I went to Paris to be an au pair, so work with a French family.
Nice.
And I had studied French for 3 years. I had really good grades, like straight A's. I knew the grammar by heart. And when I got to Paris, I realized that I did not understand what they were saying. They didn't speak the way that I had learned at school. So I was surprised because I thought I knew French, but in the end I couldn't even speak. But then, you know, with children, it's kind of easy. The vocabulary is not so difficult. So I kind of made it work. So that was kind of my first experience actually using a foreign language.
Nice. And so you went to school in Finland, I understand, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I was just thinking that Finland is always thought as, you know, as the country in which education is the best in the world. And which I'm not saying is not true. What I'm saying is when it comes to languages, which is, you know, what I'm most familiar with, I always tell people that there might be slight differences, but I think the traditional grammar approach is pretty much dominant all over the world, right?
I think so. We might have more English in the preliminary school, or I don't know, excuse me, more oral exercises. I'm not sure, but it's still quite heavily grammar based. Of course, this was 20 years ago, so something might have changed, but that's my understanding still of the school system.
Yeah, but it's like always like the Scandinavian countries, and especially Finland, they're always regarded as the, you know, the like best education in the world, which again, I'm not an expert in that field, but when it comes to languages, that's my feeling. And yeah, I've never been to Finland, but I've been to Sweden, and it's true that, you know, when you're out there in the street, you can talk to anyone in English and you're not gonna have any issue. But I feel like it's not because of the education system, but maybe because I think you're about to say it. So
yes, I am convinced it's because our TV and movies are not dubbed. Everything is in English. So we actually get that comprehensible input from the start. I mean, Disney cartoons are dubbed, okay, but like everything else is in Finnish for us, so we hear it. So even small children, like some of my cousins who are much younger, I remember a few years ago, they understood English like children, just and they could also speak it. So it's I think that's that
magic, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just stop doing dubbing and then everybody could be fluent in English.
Right. Yeah, because also when you start watching TV or cartoons, movies, whatever it is, in your target language, English in this case, when you're a kid, the difference is, as a kid, you're not worried about, like as adults are, you're not worried about which word did he use, or is it subjunctive, you know what I mean? So they're just worried about understanding what's going on, right?
Exactly, yeah.
They're not gonna feel stressed because they don't understand a specific thing.
And I should of course mention that it's all subtitled in Finnish, so they do get that translation, but still hearing it every day when they watch the series or movies, it makes a difference. And at some point, I think that they still, even if they read the subtitles, they more like listen and understand it. So it's like this combination.
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking about, in my case, in Spain, it's all that, everything.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting because you look at two somewhat similar countries, being Spain and Portugal, with somewhat similar languages, but yet, like Portuguese people in general have way better English than Spanish people, and it's the same reason. They don't doubt anything in Portugal.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Right. And so, yeah, obviously there are always differences, but they're like two similar cultures, similar languages, so it's easier to compare, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense, actually, now I think about it. Portuguese usually speak really good English.
Yep, yeah. And of course, I was going to say joking, but not really. Like when a foreigner comes to Spain, it's actually good for them because they're going to learn Spanish.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no alternative, right? It's not good for us as native speakers, but for people coming to Spain, it's a good thing because they're going to end up acquiring Spanish because there's no alternative.
Exactly, and it's exactly the opposite in Finland, because you can live in Helsinki and most of the bigger cities completely in English. You can work in English. You don't actually need Finnish. But of course, to get like real Finnish friends and like feel like you're part of the community, it's always better to speak the language. That's how I see it, and that's why I like learning languages myself.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's interesting. So you went to Paris first, you said, then after 3 years of French, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
So that you thought your French was amazing.
Yeah, I got such good grades, and like I understood when I read French, like my textbooks.
Right, because you had time to think about it, to sort of process.
Exactly. But then, yeah, they don't use the same structures necessarily, and they drop out letters like in many other languages as well. So
Nice. And when you were there as an au pair, communicate in French with the kids? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes they want foreigners so they can communicate in English, for example, with their kids, so their kids can learn another language. Okay.
No, this was in French.
And yeah, like you said, with the kids, it's all right? Because again, they only want to communicate. They want to live life, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do you remember your experience with the parents or the adults or people in the street? Or
Yeah, I remember that at the end of the day, if I had been in the French environment all day, I was really tired, because I had to concentrate all the time to understand what they were saying. And that takes a lot of energy, because it wasn't automatic yet. So that was, and of course, I found friends who were other au pairs, so we all spoke English, so that wasn't really a problem. With the family, like we went on weekend holidays sometimes with other French families, and it was 100% French all the time. Everybody speaking at the same time during dinner, and I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, after a while, I kind of started getting used to it, but I didn't stay for so long. So then I came back to Finland and continued my studies in university of French. And then I also met some Erasmus students and did this kind of language exchange experience. So I actually got to speak French, and that's how I got over the. I always say it's like the wall of speaking. You need to kind of force yourself to open mouth and start speaking. So that's how I got over that. And
right,
yeah.
So when you went to France, you already spoke English then, because you were mentioning that. And what was your experience with English? Like same through the like education system or?
Yeah, but in English, it was different because I had started studying English when I was 9. So it was already 10 years. However, as I said, I think the more important aspect is that everything is in English in Finland. So I remember that it was the first time that I actually spoke English. So it was a bit of a, like, I was doubting myself, but then it got easy really quickly. So I didn't really see many problems with that.
Yeah, because you did it for the first time, so you never know, right? And
yeah, exactly.
Through language acquisition process, I always talk about it like it's subconscious. So there's a bit of uncertainty because you've never done it before. There's quote unquote, there's no way to know how much you know, you know. But
exactly.
you know, when the words start to come out, when in a natural way, you start understanding what the other person is saying without the effort that you were putting in. When
exactly, you don't have to translate all the time anymore. It just like comes automatically.
Right.
Yeah.
And was there a specific moment that you started to think about this? There's something wrong with this, like, you know, with the traditional way of learning a language, because you felt that yourself when it comes to French.
Yeah, exactly. So then a few years later, I was in university and I wanted to do a semester abroad, an Erasmus in Italy.
Nice.
And because of my experience in France, I knew that if I wanted to have the real Sicilian experience, I was in Sicily. I had to speak Italian, and I knew that I could not learn Italian in 1 year. I had 1 year to do it with only traditional classes twice a week. So I was like convinced that I had to do something something more, and I started searching online on YouTube, and I found this amazing channel, Italiano Automatico, Alberto, who is using the natural method, the comprehensible input as well. So these are similar videos to mine with double double subtitles in Italian and English. And he was talking about this. This was the first time I heard about this, like listening and just assimilating, absorbing the language. And I said, well, I'll just try, you know, you never know. And after 4 months, I remember watching, I was like, I'll try to listen to some like normal Italian video, like a normal, I think it was something about health and fitness, like a YouTube channel. And then I realized that I understood everything she was saying, like really fast Italian. After 4 months of listening to these Italian Automatico videos, I was like, wow, like it's working. And when I started, I didn't know any Italian. Pizza, pasta, okay, that's all. So that was like, my mind was really blown. That was amazing. And 4 months is a really short time. I think it was so short because I already speak another language in the same language family, French. So it helps with the assimilation of the language. But still, I think.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you're able to communicate in the language. But in 4 months, when it comes to a language in the same family tree, like you said, like French, you can feel a really great improvement when it comes to your ability to understand, like you said.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean that you can communicate in Italian like Dante would, right?
Exactly. But that's kind of how I did it. So then after the 4 or 5 months, I started another language exchange. So our university had this kind of course where I would get a language partner, an Erasmus student, and we would meet once a week and speak Italian, and I would teach some Finnish as well. So I started doing that, and that was the first time I spoke Italian. And in the beginning, again, it was difficult to get the words out. I understood everything she told me, but then I had to speak. So it wasn't like I was fluent immediately. But, you know, like continuing to listen every day and meeting her once a week, maybe twice a week sometimes, like I got that practice. And then by the time I left for Palermo, that was 1 year after I started, I got there and my life was completely in Italian. Like I just started speaking Italian right away with my tutors, with my professors and my friends. And I was like, wow, this really works, because I'm not like language, you know, guru or whatever. I'm just a normal person. I just happen to find this method that really works.
Yeah. Yeah, I always talk about it. Like, I'm convinced we can all learn any language.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, again, it's gonna take longer than most people think, I guess. When it comes to your ability to communicate, again, I always talk about the fact that there's no shortcut to learning a language.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing, but I think when you were listening to Espanola Automatico and so on, you were having fun, right?
Exactly.
The thing is, it takes longer than most people think. There's no shortcut. There's no how to learn the language in 3 month thing. That's not going to work.
No, definitely not.
But the good news is you're not going to have to struggle throughout the process like we're used to, like, you know, studying grammar and
the irregular verbs, subjunctive and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, that's everyone's favorite in Spanish. Well, Spanish, French, Italian.
Like, in Spanish, it's everywhere.
I always get asked, like, why do you use subjunctive there, or how do you use it? And I'm like, because it sounds right.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't reply to people with the rule when they ask me about that, mainly because I don't know it. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember there was a girl from India, like she was studying Spanish philology in India, right? So she used to ask me a lot of questions about grammar things, and to answer to her, I would have to think about it for like 20 minutes, come up with a rule of my own, some sort of weird explanation that, you know, it just.
I know. I actually told my Finnish students not to ask me questions about grammar. I told them I wouldn't answer.
Right.
Because you can find the rule online, like if you really need to know it. But
yeah, that case I mentioned, that was a friend. It wasn't my student.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let me try to come up with some weird explanation.
Yeah. Sometimes when you think of a rule, like an explanation, you realize that like you don't know the rule, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh, this is how it works. It's like a surprise for yourself as well.
Right.
Because a lot of the grammar rules that foreigners learn in studying Finnish, for example, we don't learn them at school. Like I don't know all the names of the different verb categories or all of that. Like I don't know them because we don't study. I mean, of course, we study the different tenses and the cases in Finnish, but like some of them we don't. But then the foreigners do, and I always ask myself why.
Why? Yeah. And then you can argue that we do learn grammar in our native language in school, but first of all, that's afterwards, right?
Exactly.
So we're perfectly able to communicate in every situation. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I don't really know how much that helps. Meaning that, I don't know, half of the class is not really paying attention, and the other half you're studying for the exam. Like a week later, you don't really know what it was all about. you know?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this recently, and of all my classes in primary school, high school, and so on, in like Spanish language, Spanish literature, I only remember one thing, like one conscious thing, which is how to, I don't know what you call that in English, but you know that some words, some letters, some vowels in Spanish have like a mark on top of them?
Accent. Yeah.
Yeah, accent or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I only remember the rules to sort of accentuate those. That's the only thing I remember. That's it.
And you speak perfect Spanish, so
Yeah, I'm not
you
bad
know.
at Spanish. I'm not bad at Spanish. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's what I read as well, that we actually learn our native language grammar to write better, to know how to write correctly the official form of the language, but it's not to speak or communicate better.
Yeah, and
so
then,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess it also depends what your goal is in the language. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not going to help you speak better because it's conscious knowledge again. And I'd even argue that even when it comes to writing, obviously, again, because it's a subconscious process, you can't really measure it. But I think reading is the one thing that really helps you the most when it comes to writing as well. Because you're going to acquire the grammar naturally as well.
Yeah.
I argue that the thing that helps you the most to improve your writing is actually reading, not
yes.
consciously learning the rules. But again, consciously learning the rules is easier to measure, it's easier to grasp, right? Anyway, so because, for example, I think when it comes to my Spanish, when it comes to my writing in Spanish, I think I'm pretty good, but not because I paid attention to grammar classes, but because I've always loved reading.
Yeah, the same.
You know, but again, it's how do you measure that, right? Like I read a lot. How much did I learn by reading this book?
Exactly. Yeah.
No way to measure that, right? No. But yeah, like recently, I'm always, whenever I meet like an English speaking person, I ask them, "Do you know what a phrasal verb is?" No idea. Whether they're American, Australian, British, if they're not teachers or anything like that, they have no idea. I get asked all the time about like Spanish verb tenses, and I'm like, which one is that?
Because you just use them.
Yeah, like I'm having trouble with pretérito, whatever, and I'm like, I don't even know which one that is. or like here in Poland where I live, I remember I don't do that anymore, of course, but before I came across comprehensible inputs, different questions, and so on, I used to ask friends or people like, but why do you change the word? You know, because they have cases, like you said in Finnish, right?
Yeah.
Why do you change like parku, or whatever it is? Like, no idea.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I tell my students as well that there is no why, because sometimes they ask me like, why do you use this case in this situation, but then almost the same sentence, but another case. It's like, it's just because that's how it is. Like, I can't explain it. It's just you have to learn it by the natural process, by assimilating the structures.
Yep. And again, I can think for 15-20 minutes to come up with a weird explanation, but I think that's going to hurt you instead of helping.
Yes, because when you speak, you can't think of the explanation and then say it. You can't have a conversation if you have to translate and think about all the rules all the time.
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
And when did you decide to start your own YouTube channel, to start creating content for Finnish students?
Yeah, it was, I think it was right after this 4-month period of listening. I mean, I still listen to the videos after that, but once I saw that it actually works, and I started looking for materials for Finnish, and I didn't find anything that uses this type of learning method. And I also saw I had a few foreign friends in Finland, in Helsinki, and I saw the Finnish textbooks, and the textbooks teach a language that we don't actually use. So in Finland, we have the spoken language, which is quite different from the official official standard language that we use in writing. And I was like, if you learn this standard language, you will not understand what Finns are saying.
Right.
So I was like, well, I want to give the same opportunity for Finnish learners to learn with this natural method. So I just started making videos on my phone, writing the subtitles. The first videos, I think I was afraid of the camera, and you can see that. But you know what? I actually got really good feedback from the beginning, because that's what was missing. Like, you couldn't find good material back then. This is 2016. That was in Finnish everyday spoken language, the colloquial language. So I just started my channel making those videos, and yeah.
And did you start talking about like daily topics, or do you have any structure in mind, or how was it?
I just picked a topic that I had in mind, things that I thought that, well, first of all, about Finland, a bit about the Finnish language, about Finns in general, and I try to include vocabulary that they would actually use in, when they communicate with Finns. So I always said, like, why do we learn where is the train station at first? Because no one asks people that. We have Google Maps now. Like, you don't need that.
I mean, that's in every language. Like, where's the train station? Is like, I mean, I guess if the same course was created, I don't know, in the 70s or the 80s, or that was sort of useful, I guess. So
yeah.
Every language decided to do that, right?
Exactly. I think now they should change it to, what's the Wi-Fi password?
Exactly.
Because if you know how to say that, you can get by.
They're good. Yeah. So you try to make it more practical, if you would, but like real language as well, because I'm just imagining that I don't know anything about Finnish, but I'm guessing that not only people studying from textbooks were not going to understand real Finnish, right? But I'm guessing that if they try to communicate, it would sound really weird or artificial for you native speakers. Yeah.
Yes, because no one speaks in that form. In the news, yes, the prime minister in their speech, president, maybe politicians sometimes, not even. So if a foreigner speaks with that kind of language, we would understand, of course, because it is the standard language, but we would notice that they're foreigners, which is fine. I mean, that's not a problem. But I think a lot of us would change into English, because if you don't speak the normal everyday spoken language, we kind of know that you're not completely fluent. So
right.
Yeah, so to help them, we would switch to English.
Yeah, if you would feel like it would be a weird conversation for a while, and yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But there's a lot of discussion about which language to learn first. And for me, the kind of objectives that I have in my language learning, which is to actually be able to speak to people and, have friends and etc. I always recommend learning the everyday spoken language first, because then you can more easily kind of acquire it, because everything you hear is in that language. And then after that, I think it's quite easy to get the standard form by reading books, for example, because those are always mostly, let's say, in the standard language. Sometimes the dialogues are written in spoken language, sometimes, but mostly it's the standard.
Yeah, and it depends on the book as well, I guess, depending on the genre, and
yeah.
But yeah, books tend to be more formal in general.
Yeah, exactly. I assume it's the same in Spanish. Like, people don't necessarily talk exactly like in the books.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it works for every language, but still, it's Now there are different types of books, different genres. So it's whatever you're more interested in. Yeah, I try. Like my goals when it comes to language is exactly the same. Like to be able to communicate with. Well, first of all, to be able to consume content in the language, because I know that's going to come first. It's not going to take as long as the second part. It's my ultimate goal, of course, but I've been thinking about this recently. That like obviously I'm gonna go on and try to get to a point in which I can communicate with native speakers in a natural way, but just being able to understand content in a different language is rewarding enough for me, because I'm going to be able to understand the culture a little better. So that's like the first step, but that's rewarding enough. So I'd be okay with stopping there. I'm not going to stop, but I'll be okay with it, right? So then, with that being said, what I'm always focusing on is enjoying what I'm doing, enjoying the podcast I'm listening to, the books I'm reading. So I'm not consciously concerned by whether that's formal or informal, because I mean, for the most part, I'm consuming content on YouTube, so it's going to be real language for the most.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't watch the news or things like that. So that's it's always going to be a different language, but I always try to find comprehensible resources about topics that I'm interested in.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the long run, in a natural way, I'm going to get exposed to the actual language that is used in the streets. So that's how
I've done it as well. First we chat with Italian, then when I wanted to improve my French and Spanish as well, like once I get to the point that I understand mostly normal language, I just try to find videos, YouTube channels or series that actually interest me, that I would watch in any case in English or other language. And then it's like getting two birds with one stone and like having fun while you're improving your language. And I think that's how it should be, because otherwise, I mean, if you're not interested in something and you have to, like at school, of course, we had to learn all the chapters, even if we, weren't interested in, I don't know, shopping or something else in the textbook. But I think that's why I think language learning is so personal. First of all, because it happens in your head, and this is what I always try to highlight. That I feel like sometimes we would want someone to just pour the language in our head and be like, okay, like, can you teach me Finnish? But no one can teach you. I don't remember who said that. Like, no one can teach you a language. You have to learn the language.
Okay.
Like, of course, you need the material. So that's what I do. I make these videos. I have this online course. The material is there, but the language learning happens in your head, because that's like, you have to have the new neural pathways in your brain that are required in order to learn the language.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and you, as a teacher, you're facilitating the process, right? Or
exactly.
You're adjusting to the level your students need. But at the end of the day, you're talking about real life topics, and it happens to be in Finnish. That's the thing, right? Like, same when you're consuming content because you're interested in the topic, but the topic happens to be in the language that you want to learn. You're killing two birds with one stone, like you said. That's what I actually, whatever topic I'm interested in, obviously it needs to be comprehensible, so it depends on the language, right? But whatever topic that I'm interested in, I always try to find resources about that topic in one of the languages I'm learning. So instead of consuming that content in my language, Spanish or English, I try to find it in Portuguese or Italian or French, or Polish.
Exactly, yeah.
Because that way I'm learning about the topic, which is what I'm actually interested in, but I'm getting exposed to the language.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like learning because you're interested in the topic itself. But ironically, that's actually what's helping you out.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny, but it's awesome. But
I don't know why teachers don't tell that to students, or I mean, at school, I'm thinking we were never told to like go home and listen to something you're interested in English.
Never. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like a never-ending circle, because you as the teacher, when you were a student, that's what you got. Then you went on to become a teacher, and you were taught to teach this way, right? And if you were interested in learning another language, you went to a language academy, or you try to learn the language, and you were exposed to the traditional grammar approach. So it's hard to break the cycle.
Exactly.
Unless you have one of those experiences that you had in Paris, for example. Or in my case, actually, I think I studied English for pretty much 15 years throughout the whole education process. And same. I mean, I didn't get straight A's, but I got passing grades. It was fine, but I didn't enjoy the process. But the bottom line is, after 15 years, I could pass any grammar exam, but I couldn't speak the language.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
But that's the thing, the school classes, mostly the objective is for us to pass the tests. So it's not, I mean, it's about the system. You know, teachers have to follow that curriculum, the norms that we have. But I think it's changing, actually. I'm pretty sure that now, especially now that YouTube and, you know, this online learning is so much kind of bigger, I think there's a lot of new tools and new ways of doing. I hope so.
Yeah, it is. I think so, yeah. But again, when you're in that formal traditional environment, it's hard to break out of it, because all you're getting, your whole experience as a kid, your whole experience as a soon-to-be teacher, you know, your experience around you when you are a teacher in the school, it's all about the same thing, and you have curriculums you have to follow and things like that. It's actually hard to break out of it, like I said.
Yeah.
But I think for most people, it's been an experience like yours in Paris, or mine with English, or like that for some reason or another, they went to a foreign country. They thought their language was good enough, or similar situations, but it wasn't. So they started to realize, wait a minute, there's something here that is not working properly, right?
Yeah.
So you said you obviously finished your native language. You learn English, French, Italian in Sicily.
Yeah.
Learning Spanish, or how's your Spanish going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well, I have to say. So it's been a long process, but I'm still practicing, but I can have conversations, not perfect conversations, but still. And I understand pretty much everything at the moment. So I'm still trying to improve it to be, you know, more comfortable with it, but that's still ongoing. And then I speak, well, I understand. So Swedish is actually the second language in my hometown, or the biggest language in my hometown, because I'm come from the Swedish region in Finland. So we are a bilingual country. 6% of the population is Swedish speaking. Because we were part of Sweden before, and the language kind of stayed in some areas. So I've always heard Finnish Swedish, of course, because it's a different dialect. And when I lived in my hometown, I still spoke it more or less, you know, quite well. But of course, I don't practice it now, so I'd say it's passive.
Okay.
But one of my objectives now would be to get all my languages to a pretty good level, so that I could speak like all of them like that. So that means a little bit more practice in Spanish, and then getting Swedish as well to the level it was before.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you went to Stockholm, for example, you could communicate, right? No problem. Or
I think it would take a bit of like a few weeks to get used to it, also because it's a really different dialect, or like the accent from Finnish Swedish. I actually heard that someone from my hometown went to Sweden and they spoke Swedish there, And the Swedes were like, oh, Finnish is quite weird. Like they thought they were speaking Finnish, but it was actually Finnish Swedish.
Right.
But I mean, it's the same language with just a different way of speaking.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's not like they're related like Norwegian and Swedish, for example. Right? Finnish is a completely different language.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how long have you been studying Spanish for?
Spanish.
Sorry, learning Spanish. I don't like the word studying.
Okay. I can't remember when I started, but then I had a bit of an on-off relationship with Spanish, I have to say. But it's been like 3 years maybe, like constant or more active studying. So that's a long time. Normally I should be at a better place, but I have other priorities as well. So
yeah,
it hasn't always been the
should is a dangerous word anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I do it for fun, so it's
right.
just
and again, 3 years can be really different if you're getting exposed to the language for 20 minutes a day or for 3 hours a day. So,
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, when I started, I started watching another great channel, actually, Espanola Automatico, which is the same kind of idea, yeah, but they don't have subtitles in English. So I started watching in Spanish, but very slowly spoken Spanish, right from the beginning. And I understood, obviously, because of Italian and French already. So pretty quickly, I got to the level where I understand like YouTube videos very well. So I've been on that. I was on that level for a long time before I started speaking because of COVID. I didn't have anyone to practice with, and then, as you said, it's kind of more difficult. So you have to make a lot of effort to then get to that speaking stage. So that was where I was kind of staying for a long time. But
cool. Yeah, it takes, like I said, it takes longer because, again, I think also because of the traditional grammar approach, when you get to a point in which you can understand this much, for some reason, we believe we should be able to communicate at a similar level, but
exactly.
it doesn't work that way.
No. And
I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but it doesn't work that way.
Exactly. No, that's what, I think many language courses have this like promise, like, okay, you get to B1 in understanding and speaking. But like, for example, my course that I have, Finish Me, which is this kind of beginner intermediate online course for Finnish learners, like it gets you to that understanding, like really high understanding. And once you have that level, that's what I tell my students. Once you have that level, then if you can like complement that with speaking, you can get actually faster to that stage rather than if you start speaking from the beginning. Because when you start speaking, when you don't understand anything, first of all, you can't have a conversation because you don't understand. And second, you don't have vocabulary. So you have to search all the vocabulary in a dictionary. So it takes time. But once you understand everything, it's just kind of getting over. It's a lot in your head, like the barrier or the wall. It takes time. Like speaking and language always requires, like learning to speak, it always requires speaking it. So there's no way around it. As I said, it is a process. Like you need to make an effort. But like that's what I call this way of learning, like first learning to understand. And when I study, when I learn language, I listen. Like I don't even try to write or speak at all. And I call it the lazy way because it's like listening is fun. It's fun to notice, oh, I understand better. And like you don't have to make the effort to try to, write I remember all the exercises at school. I never liked them. Because then when you understand, your brain is already working in that language, and then it's easier to start speaking, and like it's less second guessing, it's more automatic.
It's going to come out naturally. That's the point. Again,
yeah.
You look at kids, they don't start speaking when they're 1 month old, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are surprised how well their kids, or like really small children, understand. They're like, oh, like they understand so well, but they don't speak. I mean, of course, the children, it's a bit different, but still, you know, it's the same. Like
The principle.
they don't sound, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're a year old. They understand, I mean, not everything, but pretty much everything you're saying. They just don't say anything. It's just how the process works. You know, it's, I understand you're wanting to communicate from day one. Okay, I get it, but it's not going to work. Like you said, you're going to be translating everything. So when you try to force the issue, you try to communicate when you're not ready for it yet. You're gonna fall back to your native language or English or another language. You're gonna consciously translate. You're gonna, I mean, it's like a mess in here. Right?
Exactly.
As opposed to focusing on listening, reading, on the lazy way, like you said.
Yeah.
It is, I understand, it is lazy, but it is the way it actually works.
Yeah,
Right?
it's more efficient.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And once you've been doing that for a while, you know, you're going to start feeling like the words is going to start to come out. It's just a natural process. You know, it's, yeah, I always try to make it so whenever in doubt or whenever I'm not sure about something, what's the more natural way? You know, that's always what I'm thinking about. Like,
what sounds right?
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm forcing the issue when it comes to speaking, maybe I'm not ready yet. So I should focus on just listening and reading, learn those things. But you mentioned like B1 certificate and so on. I've never been a fan of those, obviously, because again,
me neither.
It's if I look at my own process or my own journey, for example, with Italian or Portuguese, my listening, my understanding is C2. That's everything. I don't speak at that similar rate at all.
Yeah.
I can perfectly communicate, but not at the same rate. Even with English, I understand 100%, but that doesn't mean the complex structure that native speakers use, that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to use them in a natural way. They just don't come out as naturally as they do for native speakers, right?
Yeah.
Even French, my French understanding is maybe not as much as Portuguese and Italian, but pretty close. But I don't communicate at the same rate, at the same level. Same with same with other languages. So if I'm going to get a certificate, what's actually my level? You know, is it
exactly
what? If I've never read in the language, my writing is actually A1 because I haven't been exposed to the written language. So I can understand the language, I can communicate somehow, but I've never read in the language. I've never actually seen the words. How am I going to write?
Yeah, and in languages like French, which is really different from the way you spell it, like this is a huge difference. Someone could be like really fluent in spoken French and then not being able to write it correctly. But what's the level then?
You actually have 4 different levels in one language, right?
Like, yeah, exactly.
My speaking, my understanding, my reading comprehension.
Yeah.
It's a mess. But again, it's part of the whole formal traditional education system that I'm obviously not a fan of.
Yeah, but you have to have some ways to give the grades and evaluate students. I guess that's where it comes from, unfortunately.
I mean, in formal settings, I understand. Well, I understand. Again, I'm not a fan of at all, but I understand. Yeah. So when I talk about this, I'm not taking a shot at teachers.
Me neither. No.
I keep repeating that. Like I said, my mom's now retired, but she was a French teacher in college. So I know how it works. I know, so no, no pun intended here.
No. The same. Yeah.
It's about the the method more than anything. Okay, and is there any other language that you're working on, trying, that you want to start with, or?
Well, I mean, as I said, I would like to keep all these languages now like at a good level, but I have a wild dream to start learning. You're gonna laugh at this. I would like to learn Elvish from the Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
That would be so cool. But I don't think there are a lot of people who speak it, so it wouldn't be necessarily very useful. But I love that language. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, obviously talking, you're not going to be able to talk to talking, right? But maybe, is it Peter Jackson, the director of the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's someone who speaks Elvish somewhere.
I saw some material online on YouTube as well, but yeah, this might stay as a dream. Other languages, a couple of years ago, I kind of tested starting to learn a language from a different language family with this natural method, and I tested German because, okay, I speak Swedish, it's in the same group, but it's still quite far from German. So I tested that for a month, and it was really great because I noticed that even, like, I think it did 30 minutes per day, every single day though. So that was the secret. Again, with like slowly spoken videos with subtitles. And I started understanding, like in 1 month, like very slowly spoken videos about random topics. So I might continue with German at some point because I found it quite fun. And the reason why I study European languages, I think, is because I live in Europe. So like I want to be able to then use those languages. So that's why, yeah, it makes more sense for me to learn those. But if not, I mean, I do think like Mandarin or Japanese or, you know, Asian languages could be really interesting, but yeah, maybe at some point.
Yeah, I understand it because I will at some point as well, but I feel like I also want to learn Chinese, I mean Mandarin or Japanese or things like that. But obviously when you think about learning a new language, you think about, okay, German or Japanese, for example, not just for practical reasons, but you know, in German, you're going to get to a point in which you can understand more interesting resources way faster than German, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to German, I'm actually learning German now. Been doing it for a couple of years. And yeah, first of all, I found English to be helpful when it comes to learning German because some of the words I could understand.
Yeah.
But I started from scratch. I started watching some YouTube channels that like comprehensible input German. And I could understand. It's like magic.
Yeah.
And I'm actually documenting how much I'm getting exposed to the language. So I'm at about 300 hours of exposure to the language. And my ability to understand is just skyrocketed.
Wow.
But I can't communicate yet.
No.
I mean, if I force the issue, I could say certain things, but I don't want to do it. And you know, I don't have the need to try it. I don't live in Germany or anything. But because again, I'm learning, as you call it, quote unquote, the lazy way. I'm enjoying the process. So I'm fine with starting to communicate whenever I feel like I'm ready, or whenever in a natural way I feel like the words are coming out of my mouth. You know, I don't want to force the issue.
Yeah.
But back to how you measure it, that you talk, I mean, you were talking about the formal education system. That's like a different word. But I think it's important, like for me as a language student myself, obviously because speaking takes longer, there's a bit of uncertainty. You don't know, is it working? You know what I mean? But obviously the way I measure it is by looking at how much I can understand, as opposed to a couple of months ago or 6 months ago. a year ago. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you start feeling like little by little, a few words start coming out of your mouth and you start understanding more complex and interesting resources. So there's a way to measure it or have
Exactly.
an idea of where you stand.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't remember the struggles you had 2 months ago. Maybe it's difficult if you don't actually think about it, and then this is how we kind of might lose our motivation, or kind of like, oh, like, is it working? Like, it's so hard. Like, I'm not better than a week ago. But what I always tell my students is that the secret to language learning is consistency. Like, you have to keep going. Like, you can't just expect that, okay, you do 3 hours today and then you wait for a couple of weeks and then you do, like, you need to keep doing it and make it as a routine in your life, and that's how you learn. Like, if you listen to Finnish 30 minutes a day every single day in this way, not just like radio on and not really paying attention, but with this method, you will start to understand, like, it's a fact.
Yeah.
So
like we all have that mechanism in our brain. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but again, that's why enjoying it is so important, because it's going to take time, like I said. But if you're enjoying the process and it doesn't feel like learning, again, in my case, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it taking long, because I'm enjoying every single minute of it, right? As opposed to the traditional way. Like, because in the long run, for me, it's even in the short run. I've talked about it many times, but in the long run, because it takes long, if you're not enjoying the process, sooner or later, you're going to end up giving up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your willpower can only take you so far, right?
Yeah. If it's like torture all the time, you don't enjoy it, then why would you do it?
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning that I'm like, I want to get to the point in which I can communicate in the language, but I'm satisfied with being able to understand content in another language. That's rewarding enough. Like I said, that I'm enjoying it. So that's why. But I totally agree. Like, it's gonna take a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and people sometimes ask me, well, like, how long will it take to understand Finnish? Like how long? And it's difficult to say, right? Because it depends on your own language, how many other languages you speak, but also how much you study. And I mean, there's no one way. For some people, it comes faster. Some people maybe take more time. There's no set time specifically. But the one sure thing is that it will happen. It just might take a different time.
Yeah, it's a natural process. Like people who are born in China end up acquiring Mandarin or Cantonese. People who are born in Japan, it's not like kids are born with a specific chip for a specific language. No, they're surrounded by the language, so they end up acquiring it. And it happens all the time. Like it works 100% of the time. That's what I meant. Yeah,
exactly. And then, I don't know, just a final point, maybe I sometimes hear people saying, oh, but I'm bad at languages. Like, I can't learn Finnish because I'm so bad at languages. And I mean, I did some research on this, and I found that actually, if you learned your native language normally, like other children, most probably you have no issues with languages, and you can learn a foreign language as well as other people.
Yeah.
Of course, some people do have linguistic issues. That's true, but that's quite rare. So normally, if you feel like you're bad at languages, I think it's the issue with the method that you use for languages, because the traditional way maybe doesn't work so well for everyone.
Maybe we could change maybe into that. Just kidding. No, but yeah, and then there are a lot of different factors that are really hard to measure or analyze, because obviously the method is the biggest one for me. Totally agree. But for two different people using the same method, even if it's the natural approach, if one of them is more used to the traditional approach, that person is really paying attention to grammar as opposed to meaning.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason. So they're always asking questions about grammar. They're paying more attention. So even though they're getting the same type of input, or it seems like, because of what's going on inside their head.
They keep analyzing it, but they should just like take it as it is. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So those two people can be in the same class. They can be listening to the same stuff, but one is progressing at a really faster pace because that person is just worried about meaning. He wants to understand the topic, and the other person is overanalyzing. Like, why do you say this or that? Why do you use that specific structure? And it gets in the way. Actually, I think it gets in the way.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's not because the other person is worse in languages. It's just because, as you said, they're just used to thinking that way.
Yeah, maybe that person was really good in the school environment, right? So they got really good at that analyzing part of the language. But that's actually hurting them when it comes to actually acquiring the language. It's just so many little things that can change it.
Yeah.
And so, but I agree. Like, I talk about it all the time. Like, there's like, if you acquire your native language, you can acquire others. It just we all have that ability.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And I perfectly remember my struggles with English through high school, high school, and so on. My struggles meaning, like I said, I passed all the time, but my struggles with actually communicating. I remember my first years of college in Spain, like Erasmus students from other countries coming to Spain at the first weeks, when they didn't speak that much Spanish yet, trying to communicate in English. I vividly remember trying to communicate with a French girl, actually, in English, because they were like the first weeks of that course that year, and she couldn't communicate in Spanish yet, or just a little bit, and I was trying to speak English and I couldn't. Like, it was just so weird. I mean, like, thinking about everything I wanted to say, my head exploding after 15 minutes trying to communicate that way.
Yeah, and it's like, I studied for 10 or 15 years, but I can't speak. Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that's why I remember looking at people who could actually communicate in foreign languages, like superheroes. I remember that because it's like, because you have the idea that in order to learn a language, you need to study hard, memorize things. So I look at people who speak different languages. I'm like I said, I thought of them as superheroes with an amazing memory, or like an incredible ability to sit down and study for 6 hours straight or whatever it is. But fortunately, let me tell you, it doesn't work that way.
No.
And I would say that if that was the way to learn a language, I wouldn't even speak Spanish. Okay. So anything that we didn't touch on, anything that comes to your mind, or?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. This was a really nice chat.
That was fun. Yeah.
Very good points for me to think about as well.
Awesome. And obviously I'll leave all the links to your channel and everything you want me to link to. But I'll leave your channel in the title, the description, and everywhere.
Great. And if any of the listeners want to learn the real everyday spoken Finnish, you can go to learnfinnish.com/5guidelines, which is a free mini course to get the key points or guidelines for learning Finnish with the natural method. Okay. So I can give you the link for the description as well.
Yeah, I'll leave the link to that as well. Okay. And
great.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alvaro.
It's been a pleasure.
Very much. Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching this interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you want to know more about language learning, language acquisition, like, you know, what's the best way to learn a language, ideas for language learning, the best resources at different levels, here you can find the whole playlist with all the interviews I've done so far with different researchers, teachers, polyglots, and so on. And finally, right here, you smash this guy right in the face to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.